And this is Shawn. I'm the product manager or market development manager, as we call it here at Zyxel, for our wireless products, our consumer products, and kind of sort of our Nebula Control Center products. So recording is going on here. When I am recording, my computer slows down quite a bit. So there might be some awkward pauses here while I wait for my computer to get around to transitioning. We'll start off with a little background on who we are in case you're new to the Zyxel family here. Speaking of slow. There we go. Brief history. We've been doing this since 1989, so we've got 30 years of experience building computer networking equipment. We started off back in the day building analog modems for use by bulletin board services and service providers, and to this day, probably the biggest chunk of our business here in North America is selling CPE and COE equipment to service providers like CenturyLink, Verizon, et cetera, et cetera. Our headquarters here in the U.S. is based out of Anaheim. So this is our warehouse, this is our sales and marketing, and this is also where all of our tech support is done. If you call in or you use the website to chat, you are talking to somebody sitting here in one of our 2 buildings here in Anaheim, California. We've got a little over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. So that's it for our little brief background on who we are. We'll start talking about Nebula now. So this is going to be kind of an in-depth presentation. It's going to last about an hour. And we're just going to sort of go through what Nebula is, explain what it is, why you might want it, and answer a bunch of questions that we get from people that are interested in it. The short version of Nebula is it's something that's been designed to make it easier and simpler for you to deploy new networks and for you to be able to monitor and manage those networks of your customers over time. So we've centralized everything on a single web interface. There is no local configuration required. Literally, you plug in the devices, and as long as they have power and an internet connection, there's no configuration needed. So you can just ship the product to your customers and instruct them where to plug it in. Instead of having to send someone on site who knows how to do configuration, you can just send somebody who just does the basic wiring to plug things in. There's no controllers, there's no cloud keys, nothing like that. Everything communicates directly with the cloud itself, and everything is managed through a single pane of glass. So that's access points, switches, and gateways. So there's a little breakdown here of the components. So we have what we call Nebula Control Center. Most of the time we'll just abbreviate that to just Nebula, although we do have other Nebula offerings. Most of the time when we say Nebula, we're talking about Nebula Control Center, which is the solution for managing all your devices. If you're familiar with Meraki products, this is a very similar model to Meraki, both in the ease of use, the ease of monitoring and managing, but without the huge sticker shock of licenses or mandatory licenses. We'll get more to that later. So if you haven't done cloud managed networking before, well, the first question is why should I get into cloud managed networking? Generally, lower combined running costs, saves you time and effort, easy access no matter where you happen to be, built-in scalability and redundancy, and the big one that we've actually found from some of the third-party surveys we've seen is security. The idea that you aren't having to spend a lot of time keeping on top of the latest security patches and things like that. When it comes to the cloud interface, we do all of that for you. And then things like firmware updates are automatically scheduled and pushed out by the cloud. Again, something we'll talk about a little bit more later here. So this slide is showing you what goes into setting up a typical network out there for you. I'm not going to go through each of these on this slide. So this is your typical installing the traditional managed network. So now we'll show what goes on the cloud managed network. Basically, all these squares now that have turned green are areas where you're either saving time, money, or both. So installation of the equipment, I mentioned earlier, it's a lot simpler. It's just plugging it in. There's no local configuration. So you spend less time on site, and you can send someone on site who's maybe a little less skilled. You don't need to worry about standardizing on how you're going to do your monitoring. You don't have to worry about remote access. There's no VPNs that you need to create. There's no cloud keys. There's no port forwarding. It's all done automatically for you. You don't need a third-party management and monitoring platform. Our cloud does that for you itself. We also can store up to a year's worth of logs and diagnostic information for you. And then updates are easily done. It's done through the cloud, through a scheduling system. You can set up and you can customize that how you want so that updates are automatically applied when you want them to be applied. We do a little bit to help simplify user device management. So the main idea is it saves you time, it saves you money. So just to hit here on some of the highlights, and some of these are repeats here, but setup without unboxing. All Nebula devices have a QR code on them. There is also a matching QR code on the outside of the box. That is what you use to assign the product to your customer. So you can just scan that in and say, hey, this goes over to Bob, site number 2. And that's it. That's all you've got to do. If you don't want to use the QR codes, you can also manually type in the the serial number and MAC address to assign them to your customers. So a lot of times we have customers here that have the equipment shipped to their main office. Sorry about that delay. I've got a question sent in here. I'm going to hold off on that till a little bit later. But if you don't want to, or people will have the equipment shipped to them at their office, you'll scan it in, assign it to your customer, and then ship it on site. So you don't have to take it out of the box to do any sort of pre-prep. You can literally just go by your stack of boxes and scan in the QR codes one at a time. Up and running in minutes, at least with the basic network. Basically, the default settings on there will have the APs broadcasting a default SSID. We'll have your switches passing traffic and the gateway operating for you. The longest amount of time is if you don't already have a Zyxel account. And if you've been a reseller for one of us for a while and sell our USGs, you probably already do. But if you don't, that's going to be the longest part of setting up the network here to get at least the basics up and running. And then once it's up and running, there's a couple of wizards in there to help tweak some of the default settings, but really easy to do. Again, there's no additional hardware or software, so there's no on-site controllers, there's no cloud keys, there's no CNA devices, nothing like that. And we do have a mobile app for those of you that would like to do mobile. It's something we're constantly improving on. We initially set this up for the installers, so it gives you the ability to scan those QR codes, assign them to a customer and to a site. It allows you to take photos of where you're doing the installation. So if someone has to go on site 6 months or a year down the road to service something, they can pull up the app and see with a photo where that particular device was installed at. It allows you to quickly check what's going on all of your customer organizations and sites. And it does give you some basic wireless configuration settings that you can change with, although we're not designing this app to be a configuration solution. We've looked at some of our competitors who do that, and we've played around with our own usability, and a mobile app just is not the right format to be doing more complex things. You don't want to be making firewall rules on an app. So we just kept the app basic as far as what settings you can tweak. And the rest of it's available through the web interface. So if you've got an iPad or something like that, you can use the website to make configuration changes on it. We've got built-in guest captive portal, a lot of flexibility there. We have the ability to do a separate guest network from your corporate network without needing to use VLANs, using something called layer 2 isolation. So that's kind of a cool feature there. We, of course, support VLAN isolation as well. The captive portal is fully customizable on how it looks. We give you sort of what you see is what you get editor interface for making some minor changes to it. If you want to change more than what's available, we allow you to download the HTML and CSS files, customize them all you want, and then re-upload them to the cloud. And then we give you a lot of different ways for people to be able to log in. We've got your traditional terms of service where you agree to the terms of service before being granted access. We have Facebook login. We have the ability to have people log in with a username and password. We have the ability for people to create their own username and password before they log in. So a number of different ways of customizing that captive portal based on whether it's a retail location, hospitality, or just a guest network at offices someplace. So here's what it looks like when you first log in. This is what we call our MSP view. All of your customers are in that second column there, which we call organization. So an org is generally who the customer is. And then under that organization, you have sites. So you'll see over towards the right there, it shows you how many sites are under each organization. You can quickly see how many different devices are online versus offline, whether it's a free or paid version of Nebula, and if it's paid version, whether the licenses have recently expired. From there, you click on the customer, and you get a similar view, but dedicated just for the customer. All the sites that that customer may have are listed on the bottom there. Again, with some snapshots showing you what's going on those networks, how many clients are online, and then the ability to take those sites and put them onto a Google map so you can get a visual representation of where the physical sites are located. And then once you choose a site, you get taken to this dashboard here. We've got two versions of this dashboard. We've got this, which is the complete dashboard. We've also got just a wireless dashboard. We have a number of customers out there that are strictly using Nebula for wireless LAN management, not for the rest of the network. So if you're just using wireless LAN, we've got a simplified version of this landing page that's focused just on wireless. For today, though, we'll just look at the main version of what you get here. So up here at the top, these are drop-down menus. So you can quickly pull those down to jump between sites or jump between customers. A little snapshot here showing you how many access points are online, how many switches are online, what's going on with your gateway, and if any of these are being overloaded, how many wireless clients are on the network, your PoE budget versus your consumption, so you can see how close you're coming to maxing out your PoE, what's going on with your WAN connection, and then if you're using our MSG series security gateways, we break down your traffic usage based on individual applications. So we can tell you whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Hulu or BitTorrent that's eating up all the bandwidth on your network, FTP. So we'll be able to break that down for you. And then we also show you really quickly here the top 3 users based on bandwidth. So again, so if you're trying to chase down a heavy user of bandwidth, you can see all that here. From here also, this is where you go through to choose monitoring or configuring your individual devices based on type. So some of the cool features we have in here for you. If you're using the Pro version of Nebula, we track every configuration change and when that change was made and which admin made those changes. So if you're going back through things and you're trying to figure out why somebody configured something some way, you can quickly see who did it and when, so you can call them up and find out a little bit more about what's going on. We have what we call misconfiguration protection. Something that's probably happened to any of you that have been doing this for a while is you screw up typing in an IP address on one of your devices, or you assign VLANs in the wrong order, and suddenly you lose connectivity to a device. So we intelligently apply any VLAN and IP changes, and if we see that something's going wrong, it's going to cause a device to lose connectivity to the rest of the network, we'll either stop doing that, or we'll make sure that the changes are applied in the right order so nothing gets taken offline accidentally. And then we've got the ability here to schedule your firmware updates. So you can choose a default time when you want that to take place. You can make specific schedules based on whether it's an access point, switch, or gateway as to when you want it to do the upgrade. So giving you some flexibility there. So this is showing here. We have the map integration. I showed you before we can do that on a site basis. We can also do this with individual pieces of equipment, drag and drop them on a Google map. We also have the ability to import in a floor plan and then allow you to drag and drop the individual devices on that floor plan so you know where they're at. If you get the Pro path, we have this automatic topology view where we will draw out what is plugged into what on your network to give you a good snapshot of what's going on there. This also applies to non-Nebula devices, so you can see who is connected to what. Again, nice little tool for troubleshooting network issues. And then we've got a number of live tools in there that you can use to do some more troubleshooting, things like pings, checking traffic, trace routes, DNS, stuff like that. So just to reiterate here, as we move away from features, setup is super simple. There's 3 steps. Plug in the Nebula device, log into Nebula and register the devices with a specific customer and their site, and then configure the devices and monitor them. And you can do these 3 steps in any order you want. So before you even finish deciding what equipment you're going to order, you can go ahead and create your customer and their sites in Nebula and start doing some basic configuration of the individual devices and customer information. So we'll move on and talk a little bit about the hardware. I'm hoping this is the right slide. It is, okay. So this is just showing our Nebula security gateways. We've got 4 models currently. The main differences between these models is going to be how many WAN ports we have, and then the throughput and horsepower. Otherwise, all the features are basically the same. So when you're trying to decide which box to get, the easiest way I find to do it is to just look at the speed of your customer's internet connection. How fast is that WAN connection? And then ask yourselves, are they going to be using the Unified Threat Management? So that's our antivirus, our IDP, App Patrol, content filtering. Are they going to be using those? If they are, then you compare their internet speed to the UTM throughput of each device and find the device that's faster than their internet speed. If they're not going to be using UTM, then just look at the SPI firewall speeds. So some of the benefits of using the MSG gateways, it's a streamlined network and application security policy management. So this is one area which sometimes causes some issues for people. The Nebula gateways are a streamlined version of our USGs. They do not have all of the functionality of the USGs. So if you're doing, you like that extra, you're a power user, you like those extra features, you like that little bit level of control, the more complex firewall rules you can create, you may not want to use the NSGs. You can still use Nebula to manage your switches and access points, but maybe you want to use the standalone USGs instead. For a lot of people, though, they don't need those advanced rules. NSGs are fantastic for that. If you're doing a lot of VPN, the NSGs are super fantastic at how easy it is to set up your VPN networks. It's literally just a couple of pull-down menus. We'll handle the complex configuration, key exchange, and stuff like that. We do have antivirus, content filtering, and IDP as part of our UTM offerings here. And we've got this really cool report if you're using the Pro Pack, which breaks down and allows you to see what's been going on as far as those UTM services go. So this is a great little tool that you can email your customers to show them, here's all the things that the antivirus has blocked, here's what content filtering has been blocking, where the attacks are coming from, which of your employees or devices have been targeted or were responsible for things like trying to visit block sites. We'll move on there to switching. So again, the switching interface is just designed to make it easy for you to make configuration changes. Super simple to select multiple ports across multiple switches and configure them simultaneously. If you're using the Pro Pack of Nebula, we've got some features that allow you to make it easy to push out configuration changes across multiple sites at once and to be able to clone existing products to new ones. PoE schedule control. We've got, if you're doing IPTV, we've got a really cool advanced IGMP settings that you can go in and tweak. And then we have this report for IPTV, which will show you what's going on in the network, which channels are being watched, who's watching which channels, and also telling you about any issues we might have noticed that might be affecting the quality of that IPTV. And we give you suggestions on what settings to change to try to solve those issues. Port-based bandwidth control, real-time and historical logs and monitoring. So for switches, we've got a number of different switches that will work with Nebula. All of our GS1920V2 switches will work with Nebula. They don't have to be used with Nebula, but they will work with it. The old GS1920s, the V1s, will not work with Nebula. So that's a question we get a lot, which is why I'm pointing this out. Part of moving from the V1 to the V2 is adding extra memory into the switches so they can handle the Nebula client to communicate with the cloud. We've got our XGS 1930 series switches. These have 10 gig uplink ports and then gigabit switches across the board. So these are able to be used and managed by Nebula. And then we've got the NSW series of switches. So these are dedicated Nebula switches. They can only be used with Nebula. And these include 1 year of our Pro Pack when you buy them automatically out of the box. Moving on now to wireless. So I want to talk a little bit about the hardware really quick, because the hardware is significantly different than, say, a Ubiquiti, even a Ruckus, as far as some of the design things that we have done with them. So the first thing we've done is we've taken a look at how to make these access points last a long time. So when dealing with solid state components, you've got 2 points of failure, which are most common. The absolute most common is probably capacitor failure, at least in short term here. So our capacitors are all solid state. There's no electrolyte to dry out, to evaporate, to boil over. So we took that away. The other major cause of failure is heat fatigue, whether it's the chips themselves burning up or whether it's the solder joints getting weak and cracking. So what you'll notice on our access point here is a giant metal heat sink that goes behind the board to pull all the heat off. And then we've got a ton of vent holes to allow the heat out. If you look at a Ubiquiti, not only do they not have the heat shield, they don't have any vent holes on most of their models. So it's something that leads to failure. And it's why even on our $89 access point, we can offer a lifetime warranty where you don't get that with a Ubiquiti product. The other thing we've done is we've focused a little bit on the RF. So some of the things we've done a little bit differently is you'll open up one of our boxes, open up a Meraki or Ruckus or Ubiquiti, is you'll see a lot less shielding on the PCBA. So we've gone a little overboard on the shielding just to give us that much better signal to noise ratio when dealing with EMI and its effect on receive sensitivity. The other thing we have done is instead of mounting the antennas onto the PCBA, we put them on their own dedicated shielding component here. So again, this provides a little extra isolation from the board from any EMI that might be coming from there. And also acts a little bit as a signal booster in that the shield actually will reflect some of the signal back to the antennas. So the combination of these two things gives you a 2 to 3 dB gain in receive sensitivity, which makes a huge difference on marginal edge cases. It's the difference between no connection or a connection that you can't really transmit any data and a slow but reliable connection. So that's something that we're doing different. Even like I said, the big guys like Ruckus and Meraki are not doing these things on their access points. And this applies whether you're talking a $500 access point or an $89 access point from us. So when we take a look at the GUI, you know, we've made it really easy to set up different SSIDs, VLANs, rate limiting, schedules for each of those. You know, a really comprehensive suite here of network security features, fast roaming features, load balancing. We've talked earlier about the captive portal functionality, so we can do captive portal just on an AP basis. You don't have to have the gateway doing the captive portal for you. A number of cool things in there for you. So when we're talking about our hardware, the 1100 series are what we call Nebula Flex. These can be used as standalone or can be managed with Nebula, your choice. I do want to highlight here that NWA 1302, which is probably the best value we've got out there for access points if you're doing hospitality. So this has got our smart antenna built in, something which normally adds about $100 to the price of an access point. It's built in here on something that's a sub $200 access point. This has been designed to plug into a wall plate. So the type of little rectangle on the bottom of the floor where your Ethernet or coax or power would normally come in, this is designed to mount there. It's powered through PoE. The Ethernet connection comes in through the wall. And then there are switch ports on the bottom, including a PoE pass-through switch port. So if you're doing hospitality, you can plug one of those cables into an IP phone. It'll get its power from there. Another cord can go to your IP set-top box for doing IPTV streaming. And you've still got another port for doing guest access et cetera, whatever you want to do with it. So it's a fantastic bargain, technology-wise, and a really unique form factor if you're doing hospitality. Our 5000 and 6000 series are Nebula Flex devices, Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro gets you 1 year of Pro Pack out of the box. At the moment, the 5123 ACHD and the WAC 6303BS, for this year, if you activate them during 2019, you get an extra 2 years, so 3 years total Pro Pack out of the box on those models. And then we've got the dedicated Map series products. So these are dedicated, can only be managed with Nebula. So I want to talk a little bit about licensing. Oh, I'm missing a slide there. Oh, well, I guess I had it hidden when I didn't mean to. Whoops. We'll move forward. So licensing. So this is a big area that sets us apart from, say, Meraki, the 800-pound gorilla in the cloud managed network space. So to begin with, Nebula management is free. You do not have to buy any licenses to use Nebula. We do offer some advanced features, reports, and things like that, and those are available with a license. So that we call Pro Pack or Professional Pack. So those are available as either a 1 year license that you can buy or as a perpetual license. So it's up to you. You can do it the Meraki way and buy licenses and renew them every year for these additional Pro Pack features, or you can buy a one-time Pro Pack license and never have to worry about upgrades again. The perpetual licenses are locked to the customer organization, not to the hardware itself. So you don't have to worry if you decide to upgrade access points or need to switch out an effective unit about it being a mess with licenses. Simply remove the old product, put in the new product, and it'll keep going with that perpetual license. So to briefly kind of talk about the differences here, the free version of Nebula, unlimited number of devices, an unlimited number of customers, and unlimited number of sites under them. Versus some of our other, the free or low-cost solutions out there, which maybe give you 2 access points or something like that free, and then you have to start paying. No, Nebula, free, unlimited number of devices, customers, and sites. The free version of Nebula gets you the zero-touch deployment, where it's just basically plug and play. It gives you automatic scheduled firmware updates, gives you full access to the configuration of all your products that are out there. It gives you the captive portal, gives you Wi-Fi scheduling. It gives you up to 5 admin accounts per organization. So for a lot of people, free version is good enough. Now we offer the Pro Pack. So the Pro Pack, what does that get you that you don't get with free? It gets you more logs. We keep a year's worth of log information with the Pro Pack versus just a week with the free version. We have automatic generate email alerts with the Pro version and the ability to send out reports with the Pro version. So you can say what's going on and get that email to you weekly or monthly. You can add your logo to the report and have it automatically emailed to your customer. Let's see, we have a cloud user database. It gets you an unlimited number of entries versus just 100 if you're using that, although most people don't use that feature at all. An unlimited number of admin accounts instead of the limit of 5 per org that you get with the free version. We get that automatic visual topology view that we generate for you. We get you the year's worth of audit logs and changes that we keep track of. And then we give you the ability to clone existing organizations and existing sites, right? Because most of your networks you're deploying probably are 90 or 95% the same from one customer to the next. So with Pro Pack, you can clone those customers and then just tweak the things that you need to tweak. It gives you the ability to back up and restore organization-wide configurations. And it gets you access to some advanced VPN and switch features, more reports, things like that, and the ability to directly open a ticket within the Nebula interface, which goes directly to our support team in Taiwan. So for a lot of people, free is fine. If you're the type of person, maybe you're doing an MSP, you're doing a lot more hands-on management, you want that additional information and alerts, Professional Pack might be for you. From a price perspective, just to give you a rundown here, it's around $30 per access point per year. For switches, it's around $35 per access point per year. You know, that compares with Meraki, which is around $200 per access point, although I think they occasionally go on sale for $140. So it's still $140 per access point per year with Meraki versus us at around $30 per access point per year. And with Meraki, if you ever stop paying that annual fee, you lose all configuration ability. Where with Nebula, it just falls back to the free version automatically. The only other type of licenses we offer with Nebula is the security license. So when you buy an NSG, you get 1 year of UTM services out of the box. So if you'd like additional UTM services, those are sold on an annual basis. So professional pack is for the management. Security pack is for the NSG for the UTM services. Yeah, let's skip that. So if you're doing the professional pack licenses, we do something here that we call co-terminations. So one of the challenges that a lot of other solutions like this run into is, well, I've bought access points, did the initial deployment, and then 3 or 6 months down the road, customer expands, or the customer's complaining about poor coverage in a couple areas, so you decide to add some more access points. And what ends up happening in traditional cloud managed solutions is now you've got you're now managing 2 different expiration dates for 2 sets of hardware. And then the additional time you need to add hardware, you run into the same thing. Suddenly you're juggling a ridiculous number of expiration dates. So what Nebula does in this scenario is it converts these annual licenses into points and then distributes those points across the entire organization. So that way everything expires at the same time. You've only got 1 date for expiration. And we do also give you the ability to purchase points should you want to, so you can have things expire on a specific date. So maybe you're installing the stuff in February, and in the future you want everything to expire at the end of Q1, so March 31st. So you can go into the Nebula interface, go into license management, and say, here's the date I want this to expire, and it'll tell you how many additional points you need to purchase from us, so everything expires on that specific date, just to make it easier for you from a management perspective. Okay, on to Q&A. So I'll start covering some of the common questions we get here. Start thinking of any additional questions you might have. So first one is, where is it hosted? It's a cloud-based solution. So we're not like Meraki, where we've got these shard things that we host in our own data center. We are using Amazon Web Services, probably the biggest name when it comes to cloud-managed or cloud-hosted infrastructure. So as long as Amazon's working, Nebula, in theory, should be working as well. Used by tons and tons of big name sites out there. Next question, is it PCI or HIPAA compliant? And the short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is, just to explain how Nebula works here, the Nebula Control Center, where you're doing all of your management and all your logs, is in the cloud. It is considered out of band. So if you're talking about PCI compliance, we are considered out of band as far as the cloud goes. The hardware itself, located on site, that is in band. None of the traffic is going to our cloud. So traffic that would normally be on the LAN still is on the LAN. Traffic that would normally go out to the internet still goes out to the internet. No user information, no user data, no credit card transactions, none of that is going out to our cloud-hosted services. So here's a list of all of the different certification, laws, regulations, frameworks, etc., that we comply with Nebula. So this is another question we run into, which is, well, this customer's got sites, some are in the US, some are in country X. How does that work? So basically, we're compliant with just about every country's privacy, data security, etc., log information laws. So whether they're in the US, Canada, whether they're in Asia, whether they're in Europe, chances are you're good to go as far as using Nebula to manage those sites. So another thing is, Nebula does all this great monitoring for you, but if you've been doing this for a while, chances are you've already invested a bunch of money in something like SolarWinds, or you're using something like Zabbix that you're used to. So the good news is you can continue to use those. All of the Nebula products still function using SNMP, either V2 or V3, and still have syslog output. So you can still point those things to your platform of choice for monitoring and continue to monitor them with it just like you do the other equipment that you have. You know, Nebula is its own thing. It has no effect on any other hardware on your network. It's just if, you know, you've got some, you know, HP switches, and you've got some Nebula switches, Nebula will let you manage the Nebula switches and won't let you manage those HP switches that are already deployed on the network. There's no need to pull everything out and switch everything over to Nebula. We work with everything. So competition, how do you compare to whoever it is? So I want to draw here, when we're looking at ubiquity in this comparison, we are comparing this to the unified Elite controller, which is their kind of version of this type of management. It's different from the free or cheap where they just host that controller software in the cloud. A lot of people aren't even aware they offer this for some reason. So looking at us versus our competition, our product portfolio, AP, switch, and gateway, so better than Aerohive, better than Aruba, better than a Ruckus as far as that goes. Plug and play cloud management, Ubiquity doesn't offer that. License co-termination, it's only us and Meraki that offers it, and with Meraki you specifically have to request it and convert your site over to it. Ours does it automatically. Only we offer a lifetime license for our advanced functionality. There is no monthly fee. And again, if our product, you decide you don't want to pay for ProPack anymore, it falls back to the free version. The Cisco, if you don't want to pay for ProPack, you lose all management access to it. Going forward here. Let's see here. Again, if you guys have questions, send them in through Q&A. That's what I can see easily. If you send it into the chat, it sort of screws up my screen for a minute and I can't really see what you're sending. Going on here to showing some of the stuff, the network topology view. You know, it's just about us and Meraki here. Configuration change logs, us, Meraki, and Aruba. All these additional features you'll see here. We compete really nicely with Meraki for the most part. That seems to be who we have a better solution against, and is a total cloud network much, much better than Aerohive, Aruba, Ubiquity, or Ruckus. That's the main takeaway there. So some other common questions here. How long does it take changes to take effect? So this is something that we run into, which is, you know, you're used to just going into the device, making changes and hitting apply, and the device applies them or reboots and applies them. So with Nebula, generally when you make a change in the cloud, it can take 2 minutes for those changes to go live. That's the average change. But it can take up to 5 minutes in some cases for those changes to configuration to be pushed out and applied. It just depends. You know, if there's what we've normally found is when people complain that it's taking a long time for their changes to go live, we generally find there's something going on their internet connection causing packets to be dropped or things like that. But just be aware, when you hit save on those changes, it can take 2 to 5 minutes before you see the changes applied. People want to know if they can manage the device locally. So no, once you've got your device in Nebula mode, you can only be managed through Nebula. We do have a web interface. It's very basic. It lets you log in. You can see whether the device is communicating with the cloud. It also lets you manually configure static IP addresses. I know some of you guys like to use static IP, so if you have to have a static IP, you can locally log in and set that static IP initially, and then after you've set that, you can continue to manage it through the cloud. Although generally what we're seeing, the trend is towards DHCP and using static DHCP to make sure the device is assigned the same IP address every time it boots up. Do I need to open any ports on my firewall? So the answer is, for the most part, no. We can do NAT traversal. So on most networks, unless you're really locked down with outbound connections, there's nothing you need to do. The communication is not initiated by the cloud. The communication is initiated by the individual device on the network. So it itself reaches out to our cloud to check to see if there's been any updates. We don't try to reach out to it from the cloud. So how often are updates done? Generally, the web interface, the cloud side of things, we do those on a weekly basis generally, and those are all seamless. You don't see them going on. When it comes to firmware updates, we try to limit it to 2 or 3 firmware updates a year. The next big one is going to be June 24th, I believe. May slip by a week or two, but we're targeting June 24th. So that'll be the next major one, and I think it's going to require updates to the access points firmware. So we try to do no more than 1 per quarter, and generally 2 to 3 per year. And then another common question is, well, what happens if the internet cloud goes down? So that means your networks will continue to function just fine for hours or days without an internet connection. You just can't go into the cloud and push out configuration changes. And with the way Nebula works, if something has gone wrong with the internet connection or Nebula is down, there's nothing you can do on the local configuration anyway to fix it. It's an internet problem. You need to wait for your internet provider to get it back up. Like I said, we've got configuration protection. So we should do a really good job of making sure you don't accidentally take your network offline by changing the wrong IP address or VLAN. Okay, so that's it for questions. If I didn't answer any of your questions, send those in the Q&A and I'll get to them in a second. While people are typing those in, hoping they're typing some in, I just want to bring up that we do have some Nebula offerings for you, or demo offerings. So if you go to nebula.zyxel.com, we have a live demo. So you can log in. We've got 3 different hotels, and we've got at least 1 access point and some stuff in each of those. So you can log in, see the log information, play around with the configuration and stuff. So it's fully functional. You just can't make any changes, but you can see what you can change. And then if you're one of our reseller partners and you are part of our partner program, we can get you a 60-day demo kit, or we'll send you the Nebula hardware on site so you can plug it in your lab or plug it in at a customer location and play with it. So let's take a look at questions here. Is the briefing you showed today available for download? So the answer to that is we've got a number of different documents available on the cloud you can download to give to your customers. To try to explain Nebula, we've got a white paper, we've got a number of other documents out there. If those are not good enough for you, you can reach out to your salesperson. We can make a copy of this PowerPoint deck available to you. We've actually got a couple different Nebula PowerPoint decks. And then this webinar itself is being recorded, so this will be up online for you to watch anytime you want. Hope that answers that question. Second question from Mike is the same thing, so I just answered that for him. Also, we've got a number of YouTube videos on Nebula, really short ones, like 3 to 5 minutes that kind of explain what it is. So it seems like most people are moving towards liking video products. I'm still a reader. I like to read. I get more information in less time, but a lot of people like videos. So, there are Nebula-based YouTube videos on our Zyxel YouTube channel that you can send to your customers as well. So Mike is also asking here, can third-party devices be added to the dashboard? So no, the dashboard is just for Nebula devices itself. So it is only monitoring and allowing you to configure those devices. If you have the Pro Pack and you go into Topology View, we will show the other devices on your network as long as they're compatible with network discovery. So they will be mapped on there, but there won't be any configuration or things you can do. We have another product out there called CNC Cloud Network Center, I think is what it stands for. So CNC is a hardware solution. If you're a Ubiquiti guy, maybe similar to CloudKey, although a little bit easier, I think, to set up and a little bit more stable. And it allows you to get easy remote access to every device on your network, regardless of who the vendor is. So it basically sits out there. You plug in this little device onto your network. It does SNMP and discovery, and it'll find every device you have on there, and it'll make it easy using our cloud to be able to get into the remote management interface of all of those devices. And it'll let you set up do, I believe, some basic SNMP changes and let you put in some scripts and run scripts with it. So if you're looking for an easy way to get remote access and do some basic remote monitoring at your sites, you might want to take a look at CNC. Next question again from Mike is, are there any APIs available? So at this point, the answer to that is no. There are no APIs for integration. If you're looking to integrate it with something third party, SMMP and syslog are currently all we're offering. That's all I can say about that at this time. I don't have any other questions. I'll stick around for another minute in case you're busy typing something in. If not, thanks for turning up today, guys. I appreciate you coming out. I hope you learned something. You know, we've got every Tuesday now, or almost every Tuesday, we're doing these Tech Tuesday presentations, which are shorter presentations focusing on specific applications or issues. I've done a couple of wireless 101s. I just recently did one on configuring voice over Wi-Fi best practices. Try's doing a bunch on his switches and his gateway products. And on top of all of that, we are looking for your suggestions for additional topics. What do you want us to provide to make your life easier and better? So let us know. You can email me directly. You can reach out to your salesperson and they'll pass it on to the right person. So it could be webinar topics, white paper topics, sales tools, anything you guys need. You'd be surprised. We've got a lot of stuff already put together, but if we don't have what you need, let us know. We might be able to make it for you. We need your feedback. We want to know what it is you're looking for that we don't have, what it is maybe some other vendors who you also sell, but they're doing better than us. Let us know all of this information. That's how we improve. That's how we get better. You know, we want to be a valuable resource for you. And Kurt is asking for a copy of the presentation. So again, on that, reach out to your salesperson. That's the easiest way for any requests you have. I guess if you email me directly, my email's up there on the screen. But generally, try to do it through your sales guy. Let them manage you so that you know what you've got, what you don't have, what's going on, or at least CC them when you email me. And that looks like that's it. So I am going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you guys turning up.